Welcome back to Beyond the Box Score, brought to you by Very Tired Men. Me and Ryan Heath here, running on way too much coffee this week, but we've got some exciting stuff to talk to you about today. Ryan, how you doing, buddy?
Hey, I'm doing great. Yeah, like you said, the black coffee mug count is rising rapidly this week, but it's always an adjustment at the start of the season. If I look a little jittery to anybody, that is why, because I am very caffeinated right now.
What kind of numbers are we putting up daily?
I tried to not go over 3 or 4 a day. I did
pump those
I
numbers
did that
up, buddy.
Monday and Tuesday for the everything report, but yeah, I don't know.
You gotta pump those numbers up, buddy. I'm on my Dan Campbell stuff over here.
All right. Yeah, I guess I'm weak on the coffee grind then compared to you.
Please be careful. Please be responsible. All right. Yeah, Ryan told me a little chat beforehand that he had an insane person Odunze rant. Asked if I wanted that, and he's like, "Yes, of course I want that. Please take it away. Lead us off with that."
All right. So yeah, I mean, if I can share my screen real quick, so I can just start talking about this. But we kind of debated all offseason about the Ben Johnson slot role. Like, I feel like this is all we could talk about when it came to the Bears this offseason is who's going to play the slot. Here was the breakdown of the Bears slot reps in week 1. So as you kind of might expect, yeah, the slot role was very valuable. It was almost half of their wide receiver and tight end targets. It was like 2/3 of their yards, but it was split between basically everybody on the team. Olave Zaccheaus, DJ Moore, Odunze, almost evenly. Loveland, Kenneth getting in there occasionally. So that's like funny in itself, right? We argued about this for an entire offseason, and it ultimately ends up with it just being split with everybody, right? But that brings me to this week. And for this week only, I kind of think that we could have a Odunze angle here. You will notice that according to his average separation score over fantasy points data, Rome had the best ass from the slot of anybody in the NFL in week 1. He looked awesome to my eye as well on those reps, getting a lot of separation from the slot. And that's really important in this matchup against the Lions because historically what we've seen is Ben Johnson attacks man coverage via the slot. We have seen just his offense's slot target rate go way up whenever he's faced with man coverage. And I think that is probably Odunze in that role for this week only, and that it could be really, really fun. There were only 4 dropbacks against man coverage for the Bears in week 1, but Odunze drew a target on 3 of those 4. One of them was the touchdown when he was from out wide. The other 2 came while he was in the slot. So this is like insane person, like 4 route run sample size stuff. But I am very convinced that Rome is going off in the slot after I spent the entire offseason telling people to stop hyping up Rome because of the Amon-Ra St. Brown role thing. So that's just the full circle I've come. It's only week 2. Now I'm a Odunze slappy, but I just wanted to share that with everybody.
I love it. Yeah, great stuff. That's what the fantasy point status suite is here for. So you can get to the 4 route sample size information and run with it. Become absolutely convinced. If you want a larger sample size, Matt Harmon's work shows that Odunze is at his best when facing man and press coverage. And yeah, I loved the role that we saw in week 1, moving him around, getting everybody in the slot. I don't know. That's just like typical, right? Like we argue over something all summer that doesn't matter at all. Like never mattered, never was a thing. And then it's just like something different, like not even the possibility we really considered that much, that it's not one player playing one specific role. It's Ben Johnson moving them all around. And who knows what we'll get this week. But it was clear that the plan was to get the ball into Odunze's hands. Really low average depth of target is not what we're used to seeing from him. It was even clear that it's not like Rome just go outside and be the X receiver and run down the field. So that is definitely exciting for fantasy. I'm glad you brought that up. That was one of a handful of notes I've got here. Ryan is mostly, I think, going to carry the show today with the advanced matchup stuff. I did my best. But man, if you guys didn't catch the 3-hour marathon live stream that I did yesterday by myself with only a few breaks. Thank you, Josh. I'm pretty exhausted today, so I've got some good stuff to get into for sure. But we're gonna do more start sit today to kind of help you guys figure out some of that stuff. I think we're a bit more unsettled at the beginning of the year. Like to me, I'm curious what you have to think about this. Like Alvin Kamara is really interesting, where he's always been this running back one in expected fantasy points player, and then we saw things change in a really significant way under Kellen Moore, and that was like something that we could have speculated on, but we've never really seen Kamara not get the targets, right? And so without the targets, like where is he? He's like Tyrone Tracy or something like that, which is weird. Like I don't know how much to react to stuff. And so I'm glad you're here and we can kind of talk through it and help people, because I'm sure that there are a lot of people feeling the same way where they don't know really what to make of what we just saw.
Yeah, no, I mean, I can give my Kamara take that I do actually feel pretty strongly about, because this is something I somewhat expected entering this year.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, the early signs are looking like I may have been right. Basically last year with Clint Kubiak, Kamara made a total living on running back screen targets, because that is what Kubiak loves doing, is just throwing a ton of targets to his running back. Kellen Moore has kind of been the opposite through his recent history as an OC, especially with screen targets. He always seems to prefer doing that with his wide receivers. Even when he was coaching Austin Eckler, we were seeing Keenan Allen get a lot more of the screen work than Eckler was that season. So yeah, I was afraid of this entering the season with Kamara, that the target volume could come down. And then, yeah, we see the Saints only throw 5% of their targets to running backs in week 1. And we get all of Rashid Shaheed, Chris Olave, and Juwan Johnson over 18 expected fantasy points there. So obviously it's week 1. So much of the skill here is learning what to react to and what not to, what's signal, what's noise. This is something I think kind of is signal. I am pretty high just on this Saints passing game. It will never be pretty or anything like that, but just with the pace, with all of the play calling cheat codes and everything that Moore takes advantage of, I think they can keep games somewhat competitive, or if they're not, they are going to throw the ball a ton and provide a ton of XFP to those wide receivers and to Juwan Johnson. But yeah, I'm not sure how often Kamara actually gets in on it this year. So yeah, Kamara was going down my rest of season rankings right after week 1. And yeah, that's kind of my stance on this offense right now.
That's where I'm at too. I think we could see things shift around in terms of the target distribution. I don't know if we're going to see so much Juwan Jennings every week. But, given that we had our suspicions that this might happen, seeing it right away is a little bit concerning. So here's where I've got Kamara. We're going to look through some of these running backs around the periphery of like flex decisions, basically, like maybe RB2 decisions. I've got Kamara at running back 23 versus San Francisco this week. Some guys that I have ahead of him are Breece Hall, Amari Hampton, Travis Etienne, Tony Pollard, DeAndre Swift, Travion Henderson, and Javonte Williams. Here we are with Javonte Williams as a low-end RB2 after 1 week. But I think it makes some sense. Just real quick on Javonte, the Giants allowed 7.4 yards per rush to the A or the B gap. So we're talking up the middle runs. They allowed 7.4 yards per rush in week 1. And that's with no explosive runs allowed. This isn't, a number that's inflated by a 71-yard Travis Etienne run or whatever. No runs of 15 or more yards, still allowed 7.4 yards per rush up the middle, a league low 10% stuffed rate against runs up the middle. So that was definitely Javonte Williams in week 1. And that's basically where we're at with Javonte Williams, I think. Did you know that Javonte gained positive yards on 93% of his runs in week 1, Ryan? Highest in the NFL, any running back? Javonte Williams.
Wow. Yeah. That is a little bit unbelievable to me. But yeah, they, at kind of to your point, they were just completely spamming these runs into the A and the B gap the entire game. Williams only ended up averaging like 3.6 yards per carry on those runs. But yeah, I think if this game kind of gets away from the Giants, and yeah, Williams makes all the sense in the world as a low end RB2. Yeah, I think the only name here that you have ahead of Kamara who makes me a little bit nervous is just DeAndre Swift. In a negative game script, I am a little concerned. I mean, over his last 3 seasons as like a lead back starter, just under 10 fantasy points per game in losses, with the Bears being 5.5-point underdogs. His fantasy points per snap while he's trailing kind of reduce about the same amount as guys like Jonathan Taylor, David Montgomery. Swift is much more of like a game script sensitive back nowadays than people seem to give him credit for. I guess just because he was kind of more of a passing down guy early in his career. So yeah, Swift is somebody that I'm concerned about, but yeah, everybody else here in front of you, I can't really disagree with your Alvin Kamara ranking.
Yeah, I got no idea what to do with Swift. I've got him at RB20. You could move him all the way down to like the RB30 range. Like he's pretty similar to Tyrone Tracy, who I have at running back 31. The role was just so good. I mean, he had 18 expected fantasy points last week. So I just kind of put him there. I'm probably going to move Javonte ahead of him. I don't know what to do with Travion Henderson. So the Dolphins defense obviously looked terrible in week 1, but I think that was mostly the coverage down the field. They actually did shut down outside zone last week. 12 carries for 18 yards on outside zone against the Dolphins last week. 37% success rate allowed overall against zone runs was where the Dolphins were at last week, compared to 58% success rate on man gap runs against the Dolphins. So maybe this is a matchup where Ramondre Stevenson gets going here. Maybe we don't see the Patriots drop back to pass 50 plus times. I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on Travion? Are we just like he could bust a big play anytime and this Dolphins defense is leaky, so start him?
Yeah, I think that's probably more the direction I would go. It would be hard for me not to start Travion after what we just saw from them overall. And I don't know, like I just always expect McDaniels to run a lot of man gap stuff. It was Henderson that got the only 2 of the 3 zone carries last week. But in general, this is a man gap team. It kind of always has been with McDaniel. So I'm not too worried about the specific splits there.
Yeah. I looked at the Henderson run chart and it was just like going to the left, just like all outside to the left. It's a small sample size, but yeah, it makes sense that at least right now, Ramondre is probably more of the up the middle grinder. Travion didn't have a single pass protection rep last week, which surprised me. It kind of just feels like Ramondre is the guy they trust right now. And Henderson maybe has kind of like some packages and stuff like that where they're going to try to get him the ball. I think they're going to expand his role, but it might not come as quickly as we want. Let's talk about Travis Etienne. So I have him at RB18 here, which is actually lower than consensus. Consensus rankings has Etienne ahead of Amari Hampton, ahead of Chuba Hubbard. Obviously a rough week for Hubbard. What do you think about that? Cincinnati's defense actually played pretty well. New defensive coordinator there, Al Golden. So yeah, the Browns struggled to run the ball against them last week. But we did see the year prior, this Bengals defense, which I don't think has a ton of talent on it, gave up the 5th most yards per carry on zone runs. And that is what we saw a ton of from Liam Cohen in week 1 here with the Jaguars. Are you going back to the Etienne well?
Yeah, Etienne scares me in that, yeah, just as you said, the Bengals actually looked pretty solid against the run last week. And just the fact that they're likely to be ahead in this game kind of also dampens the Etienne appeal a little bit after he just got to kind of grind it out against the Panthers, who are confirmed again like the worst run defense in the league. Also, the thing with Etienne is he is always like at his most explosive in September. I was tweeting this out earlier this week, but he over his last several seasons, he averages like well over 4 yards per carry in September. But by October, he is always just down to 3.8, 3.7 or below. I don't know if it's like a specific thing about his body or his conditioning or whatever, where he just gets worn down throughout the season more than most running backs. But that's like things I'm thinking about with him right now. So it's still September. I do expect him to be pretty productive in fantasy this month. It's a solid enough game environment. I think that all probably kind of translates to a lower end RB2, which is about where you have him. It's hard to make an argument for anybody over him, though, that you do have below him. So I think you're about right here.
All right, cool. Just wanted to check in because people are pretty high on him. And yeah, I did see you tweeting about him being like the inverse Derrick Henry. I thought that was interesting. Let's look at some lower end running back options here. right after our break. We've got, Kenneth Walker, Zach Charbonnet. What the hell do we do there? Got some interesting names to get to here, but we're going to take a break quick and hear from our sponsors first.
You can always count on Sundays with the NFL on CBS and Paramount Plus. So even if you can't count on accurate expiration dates,
that is a rookie mistake,
or people appreciating your fashion sense,
Jim, the crowd is not on board here.
you can always count on Sundays with the NFL on CBS, streaming on Paramount Plus.
Glad we wear our good jerseys.
Yeah.
Alrighty, so we've got my running back rankings on the screen here. Running back 24 through 42. Just so you know, you can find my rankings for free in the FFT newsletter. If you Google that, I'll deliver them right to your inbox. Give you an update on Sunday morning before things kick off. Ryan, why don't you tell the people where they can find your advanced matchup column? You're going into even more depth than we're going to today.
Yeah, you can go read advanced matchups over on fantasypoints.com. It is under the premium or the all-in subscription because it's a very DFS and betting heavy article, but it's going to be super actionable for you if you do either of those things. But yeah, again, advanced matchups on fantasypoints.com comes out every single Friday morning. And if you are a subscriber, make sure you get in our Discord there because I will also just drop my entire notes document, like everything that made the article, everything that didn't, every single note I've written all week, you can just get in a Google Doc in our Discord as a subscriber.
Good stuff. Go follow Ryan on Twitter too, by the way. Ryan J_Heath. Got it on the screen right here. Dude, just putting up lots of great information for you. Must follow. And then also, please like the video. We're here doing great work. We're both very tired, but we are happy to be here. So yeah, I'm going to do my best Dan the Man impression. Please do like. Let's keep it rolling here. 24, running back 24. I've got David Montgomery was splitting the work pretty evenly with Jahmyr Gibbs in the first half before things got ugly last week. Gets the revenge game here. We've got the classic DeAndre Swift versus David Montgomery revenge showdown. Important stuff here. J.K. Dobbins, running back 25. Jordan Mason, 26. Aaron Jones, 27. Jalen Warren is next, followed by the Seattle guys. We've arrived at the Kenneth Walker, Zach Charbonnet conversation. Consensus continues to rank Kenneth Walker ahead of Charbonnet, which really surprised me. I think they're just being lazy. Haven't gotten to it yet. I've got Kenneth Walker one spot ahead of Charbonnet, and that feels like complete hopium. Ryan, can you make me feel any better about this?
Man, it's pretty difficult. So yes, for anyone that did not read the Everything Report on Fantasy Points, which is free this week, by the way, Scott Barrett and I wrote 18,000 words about everything that happened in week one. So go check that out. But yeah, I dedicated about 1,000 of those words to Ken Walker Cope. So if anyone that has Ken Walker that would like some Cope, go ahead and check that out. But yeah, long story short, I think you have it ranked appropriately here. I am still it takes more than one game, for my opinion, that Ken Walker is just a better running back than Charbonnet to be affected. I would, if I had to project out the workload, would think it would be pretty close to 50-50 this week. But I will say, and here's where all of the cope comes in, the Seahawks offense looked almost nothing like we kind of expected it to in week one. League low play action rate. They're way less outside zone than we have ever really seen from Kubiak before. Just a lot of really weird stuff. And also from a sequencing perspective, Ken Walker was the only running back to get a touch on 3 of the Seahawks' first 4 drives. Now, unfortunately for him, all of those drives were 3 and outs. Yeah. And the drive that Charbonnet was mostly in on was the one where they actually took it down the field and scored early in the game. And so that immediately is going to kind of throw off the snap shares and the touch shares just because of sequencing, not necessarily because it's what the Seahawks wanted to do, is make Charbonnet the 60% bell cow or anything. We also have the possibility that Walker was slightly more banged up coming into the season than we were led to believe. There's just a lot of reasons that possibly we could have been getting totally punked in week one with all the Seahawks usage. I'm not projecting it that way week 2, but that is your copium if you're holding on for dear life with Ken Walker.
Here's what I got for you. Pittsburgh Steelers. Did you watch them try to defend the run last week against the New York Jets? A lot of people were telling me that Braylon Allen was better than Breece Hall in the same way that they're now telling me Zach Charbonnet is better than Kenneth Walker. Which of the two running backs crushed the Steelers last week? It was the explosive outside zone runner. So maybe we get there with Kenneth Walker. They're both fine flex starts. They both have upside. They also both could tank your week with 4 points. I don't have any confidence in either one of them, but based off what we saw last week, outside zone killed this team. And that's what we've seen the offensive coordinator for the Seahawks specialize in. That's what we've seen Kenneth Walker do at his absolute best, is outside zone. They didn't do it in week 1 against the Niners, against Fred Warner, who was just like shooting every single gap immediately. But I think it could be a lot different here in week 2.
Yeah. Also think maybe Kubiak kind of like overthought this matchup against Kyle Shanahan, who's like his best friend, former boss, like
Right.
total gut into his own head, just went away from everything he's ever
That's
been
what
good
that
at,
was my
so.
speculation. That was my cope. All right, Minnesota running backs. I've got Jordan Mason ranked higher. Again, consensus is kind of lagging here to react to what we saw last week. They have Aaron Jones higher. Do you have any thoughts on the Minnesota backs against the Falcons?
Yeah, no, I think it's correct to have Mason higher. I might even have the gap a little bit wider here. Yeah, by XFP, Aaron Jones was slightly ahead, but that's basically because of 2 wheel routes almost entirely. And yeah, Mason just looked incredible compared to Jones, at least 4.5 yards per carry to Jones being under 3. He was kind of the engine of like what got their offense going in the fourth quarter when JJ McCarthy started looking good and making plays. So yeah, I honestly might even go a little bit higher. Vikings are somewhat favored in this game.
Mm-hmm.
We also, another note, we saw the lowest pass rate over expectation in this game of any Kevin O'Connell Vikings game ever. So that's something else to note, is that their plan kind of worked. I would expect them to try to do a similar thing and get the run game going, which is just not something we've been used to in Minnesota.
All right, 2 more guys from this range. First, do you have any Tyrone Tracy thoughts? Because he had the role. The Dallas defense played better than we expected, but I think it could be a defense to attack on the ground this year. I've got him at RB31, but I think maybe I might slide him up like ahead of Jones. Maybe. What do you think about Tracy?
Yeah, I think just based on role, I would probably want him. Yeah, maybe around like the Jalen Warren range.
I'm worried that
obviously
Scadaboo
won't have
might
the
just
game
take
script
it.
of Warren.
I'm worried
I think
that
that's
Scadaboo might
totally
just take
possible
it at some point, like even this week. Probably not this week, but like I think there's at some point Scadaboo's going to take it.
Yeah. No, I agree. Like Scadaboo had, I believe, the only goal line carry as well, if I'm not mistaken. So yeah, no, definitely like capped upside here. No better than like a fringe flex.
They had him like pass protect on the goal line, Scadaboo. Like that's what I'm saying is like I was surprised that he was out there for some of the situational stuff that he was out there for. And if Tracy in the run game is not giving them anything explosive, it wouldn't surprise me if like he gets a few more looks, and if he turns those into plays, then it's like, okay, we desperately need that. Like no one is giving us anything on offense. I also think this matchup is, I hate what Matt Eberflus is doing in Dallas. He's like playing extremely, extremely conservative and just like making you beat them with, methodical drives. It's what has been like making the NFL less and less fun to watch as we keep getting more of this defense. And that, like, to me is like not a great setup for Malik Neighbors. Seems like more of a setup for freaking Wan'Dale Robinson and Tyrone Tracy and Scadaboo and players like that. Good luck.
I had positive Theo Johnson notes because of that, because of the Eberflusification of the NFL with all the zone and cover 3 that this guy just is constantly throwing at you.
Yeah. So it's only we've had 1 week. I thought this was gonna be fun. It's not. Dylan Sampson and Jakobi Croskey-Merritt are the 2 players I wanted to get your opinion on. Here I am, Ryan. The people are going to think I'm a traitor. I'm 9 spots below consensus on Bill Croskey-Merritt. Did no one watch Green Bay last week? Did no one watch Green Bay like shut down the Detroit Lions run game? That was the worst run game we've seen from Detroit in like 4 years.
Yeah. No, I'm fully with you. So this is how I kind of broke it down, is Croskey-Merritt has been, let me back up a little bit. We've been seeing all week not even speculation, just like people saying, reports, all of that Croskey-Merritt's going to be the lead back for the Commanders. He pretty much already was in week 1. It's just that the Commanders lead back role sucks. Like, it is just over half the carries. It's maybe you get some goal line work, but Jaden Daniels and Deebo Samuel are both going to get theirs there as well. And it is like an occasional early down target. And that was exactly what Croskey-Merritt saw last week. It was like 8 expected fantasy points. And that's kind of exactly what I expect this week. The Commanders on the other side of this game are just this extreme run funnel. The Packers are probably going to be able to run it down their throats the entire game. I don't expect game script to be on Croskey-Merritt's side necessarily. So yeah, he's looks pretty rough to me tonight. I might even rank Austin Eckler ahead of. Oh yeah, you do have Eckler ahead of him, and I agree with that. I imagine that's not consensus, just because the Packers are also like this huge underneath funnel and have been throughout the entirety of last season. Also, what we saw last week, so with all these spam targets to Gibbs and Laporta, low ADOT stuff. So yeah, I think Eckler is set up very well. I think Deebo Samuel is set up very well, but yeah, Croskey-Merritt is nowhere near my favorite start this week.
Yeah, it feels like an Eckler matchup, and then potentially Eckler game script as well if they are trailing. Trey Benson, I have ranked ahead of him. Ramondre Stevenson, I have ranked ahead of him. We already talked about that. But these are guys I have ahead of Bill. Benson against the Carolina Panthers. I think he's going to be in a sort of similar role. Maybe there's probably more upside for Bill to push into like 12, 15 rushes than Benson ever will get. But I think most likely Benson gets 7 or 8, 9 carries. Jakobi Croskey-Merritt gets like 10 or 11 carries. And Benson plays Carolina. Like, I just like that matchup so much better. If Arizona blows them out, then maybe he does push up into 12 or 15 carries, Nick Chubb, I have ranked ahead of him. Nick Chubb actually ran pretty well last week. Don't love him running up the middle against Vita Vea necessarily. But man, like, I think Houston's only option really right now until things get better on the offensive line is to just kind of feed him like 15 plus touches. He's in the same range as some really gross players here. Isaiah Pacheco, I don't feel good about at all after week 1 facing the Eagles. That brings me to Dylan Sampson. I have Dylan Sampson at 32. The playing time was not nearly as exciting as like the target total and the expected fantasy point totals would show. So I'm curious where you're at. Are you expecting regression here with Sampson's role where like not enough routes, so we're not going to get 8 targets? Or do you think that we see his role expanded and we see more playing time because he played really well in week 1?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to fall more into the latter category there. I think generally when you see a rookie come out with a limited like peripheral role, whatever his route share was at, like 30% or something, and he commands 8 targets on that very limited role and looks pretty awesome with them in the receiving game. Yeah, I expect that to expand. The one thing I will say, though, is specifically in this game script, that's a little bit scary to me just because we saw Jerome Ford get almost all of the long down and distance snaps because seemingly they trust him as the pass protection back, which makes sense. He's the veteran. And that's why there was like such a big difference in routes. Almost all of Dylan Sampson's stuff was like on early downs. So he could do the same thing this week, certainly. But with the Ravens being like 11.5 point favorites, if this turns into a total negative game script blowout and the Browns are just in the hurry up in like catch up mode the entire game, then we could see Ford on the field a frustrating amount would be my concern.
Yep, I think you're right. That's kind of where I've landed on him. I think I'm too high. I'm going to move him down right behind Benson, Jakobi Croskey-Merritt, and RJ Harvey. Harvey is playing the Colts. I just don't feel good enough about the role. But I guess I'm not quite sold that the Colts are as good as we saw in week 1. And they really struggled against outside zone. Miami completely gave up on running the ball. But when they did early on, it was effective success rate and efficiency wise. And that could be, we could see some explosive plays from Harvey. This wasn't a very good defense last year, the Colts. All right, we're going to take another break. We're going to get back and go through some wide receiver start sit decisions and then get into some flex decisions for you too.
Only CBS Sports can bring you big time during the heart of Saturday afternoons. It's big time.
It's big time. It's big time. It's big time.
on CBS and streaming on Paramount Plus.
Alrighty, if I can share my screen here, producer Josh, thank you, sir. I've got my wide receiver rankings up, and they are pretty weird, which is kind of always the case as you're adjusting to week one, trying to figure things out here. But we're going to do our best to help you make sense of things. Ryan, where are you at with A.J. Brown? Because I have him outside of my top 50 wide receivers. I just don't want to use him until I feel better about what's going on with his health. That might be an insane thing to do. He could obviously have a huge game against Kansas City, but if he's just not going to be used, I don't want to use him. And so that leads me to Devontae Smith, who I have much, much higher than consensus, because we might have Brown in this decoy role, and then Dallas Goedert might miss the game with a knee sprain. So any thoughts on the Eagles receivers or the matchup here against Kansas City?
Okay, yeah, I was going to ask, like, if your main reason for AJ Brown is just that you don't trust that his hamstring is healthy. I think that's fair enough. I'd be a little scared to take that big of a stance in rankings.
Did you see what Matt Harmon said about him?
No, I did not.
He gave him a 40% success rate against man coverage, which is like lower than it's ever been. And he said basically he was just like running clear out, like didn't even like it looked like just a player who was out there. And then fantasy points data gives him a 0% win rate on routes.
Yeah, so that is correct. That was to my eye. That is per basically every source is like, yeah, he was not really running like serious routes. To be fair, the Cowboys played 0 man coverage from what we charted, at least. It was like 94% zone and then like some red zone looks in there. So no like real man coverage at all. But yeah, I think the plan could have been for Brown in week one. Let's just get through this. You can run the decoy clear out routes, 10 games of rest heading into week 2 against the Chiefs. Like it could just be that the kind of the plan was we're not going to force it here with his health. With this matchup, though, I do think what's interesting is we saw the Chiefs completely take away the run game and Saquon Barkley in the Super Bowl the last time these two teams faced off. 2.3 yards per carry, stuffed on 76% of his runs, Saquon Barkley was. That puts the pressure, at least, on this Eagles passing game, which is like a prerequisite for production here, is that they kind of have to be forced to draw back. I think they will be here. So I kind of don't mind it. Both with Devontae Smith and AJ Brown, I think we could just see like a game plan that is more conducive to we actually want to get these guys going. Dallas Goedert also DNP'd on Wednesday. I don't know what he was today on Thursday, but also notably both Brown and Devontae Smith have very good splits without Dallas Goedert on the field as well, just because of how consolidated and condensed this offense is. So yeah, I would not have him ranked outside my top 50, but like I obviously get the hesitation. But yeah, I love this Smith ranking. I do think it makes sense to be aggressive here.
Yeah. So it's been over a week since they played. So maybe AJB will be fine. Maybe he's back to normal. And you couldn't ask for a much different matchup in terms of coverage types. The Chiefs are extremely aggressive, play a bunch of press coverage. Either one of these Philadelphia receivers could toast them. But I mean, I just don't. If I have AJ Brown, if I have any other option, I would rather go with that than potentially just eat a 0. The rest of my wide receiver rankings here, I've got so Smith is at 18, Ricky Pearsall is at 19. Somebody in the chat was like, "Oh my gosh, is George Pickens outside of the top 30?" No way. You guys know George Pickens up here at wide receiver 15. We'll get to that later. Ryan's got some good notes on the matchup there. So Pearsall at 19, Zay Flowers at 20, DK Metcalf at 21. Tedero McMillan at 22, Mike Evans and Emeka Egbuka back-to-back at 23 and 24. Rome Odunze, we already talked about, like the matchup here for him at 25, like the matchup for Deebo Samuel at 26. Hollywood Brown, I've landed on at wide receiver 27. I don't know what to do with him. I want to hear your thoughts. You said you had some matchup-based stuff here, right?
Yeah, this is a guy I had a lot of notes on. So basically, after Worthy went out of the game last week, we saw the Chiefs just kind of, and I hate saying this, but they kind of deployed Hollywood Brown in quote unquote the Rashee Rice role, which maybe was going to be the Xavier Worthy role, based on what some of the reports were before the game. But yeah, 14 targets. 8 of those for Hollywood in week 1 came against two high looks, 40% target share, 38% target per route run against two high, up from 26% versus single high. What we saw Vic Fangio do in the Super Bowl was just spam a ton of these two high looks against the Chiefs. It was played at 71% of the time in the Super Bowl, their third highest rate of the season. That's also kind of what the Eagles just did to the Cowboys, and also played a lot of cover 4 in the Super Bowl, 55% of the time in quarters coverage. And that all of that basically points to Hollywood Brown just in this underneath role could soak up a ton of targets, a ton of production again. The only caveat here is he is lining up against Cooper DeJean, most likely in the slot, if the alignment and everything stays the same. So that could be a little scary if he ends up being 30% owned in DFS or something. I'll probably fade him there, but I think I think he belongs as a top 30 receiver this week.
Start him in PPR leagues if you don't have a better option. Start him over AJ Brown. That's kind of where I'm at. But man, it wouldn't. I was surprised that Vegas has the over under at 46.5 points. It would not surprise me if the Chiefs have 145 yards of offense or something like that in this game. I think it's going to be a pretty ugly game, but we'll see. The Chiefs defense gave up lots of explosive plays, tons of separation last week. So maybe the Eagles receivers just eat and the Chiefs have to keep up and Mahomes does some crazy stuff. And you see some broken plays or something. But man, this defense is not one I want to test. And Hollywood Brown, for all the volume that he got, did not play very well. It's been a while since we've seen him play very well. I think we could, instead of calling it, insert this player into the Rashee Rice role, we could just call it our offense is freaking broken role. Somebody has to do it. All we can do is this. Because that's what it's been. I've watched every Chiefs game, and it's not been very fun lately. After Marquise Brown, we find Jakobi Meyers, who that was very fun. Had 6 avoided tackles, more than any pass catcher last week, any receiver at least. And he gets the Chargers, who did, like I said, give up that busted play to Marquise Brown. I kind of like some of the matchup-based stuff here. So the Chargers used single high coverage 51% of the time last week. Got torched. For a league high 0.9 fantasy points per dropback. You can find all this stuff in the fantasy points data suite. It's very sweet. Ryan was talking about 2 high safety looks. You can find all this. You can sort it by the different coverage types and then also look at the points per dropback that was allowed. And then if you want to get very specific with it, you can look at cover 3, cover 4, cover 6, all that. You can filter out by different coverage types. If you don't know what's what, you can filter out and find that in the data suite. I'm struggling here. Come on, there we go. Coverage scheme. Look at this, man, and it just shows you cover 0, cover 1, cover 2, man, zone. Yep, it's pretty cool stuff.
And you can also do this exact same thing that Jacob just showed you in advanced receiving. So if you're looking at a specific receiver and want to see how they do against any coverage shell, you can do that exact same thing. Promo code matchups15.
There we go.
Yeah, is it matchups 15?
I don't know, man. I did
bad. I think it was matchups 15. That's the promo code. If it's not, try matchups 25. It's one of those two. But yeah, go ahead, use that promo code. Get yourself some money off of the Fantasy Points data suite.
I tried to give it to the people yesterday. And I was like, I can't remember what it is. I hope Ryan remembers it tomorrow. At least we tried. So Jakobi Meyers, the matchups set up pretty well for him. It's more of a Brock Bowers note. What I found, the single high coverage, Brock Bowers averaged over 3 yards per run against that last year. The Chargers use a lot of cover 4 as well. This all sets up well for Bowers if he can play. But it's a decent spot for Meyers too, who per Hayden Winks is wide receiver 12 per game in fantasy since the Devontae Adams trade last year. Pretty good player. And now Geno Smith is just a really great fit for him, I think. I've got a wide receiver 28. Could push him higher, honestly. I'm fine pushing him over ahead of pretty much anybody here in this range. DJ Moore I have next at wide receiver 29. Can beat man coverage. Could get some deep looks. That's what he got in week 1. I don't want to disrespect this defense. I think Detroit's got a pretty good defense. So I'm still a little bit nervous here about either Bears receiver. And we've arrived at Tyreek Hill at wide receiver 30. I don't know what to do with him or Jalen Waddle or any Dolphins, of course, but especially these two. So from a matchup perspective, we've got a Patriots defense that used 71% of the time last week used single high safety looks. And so theoretically, that sets up well for Mr. Tyreek Hill, right? Like fewer safeties deep down the field. This guy's insanely fast. Lots of man coverage. Like it seems like it should be a Tyreek Hill spot. In the past, it has been. Last year, Waddle actually averaged like way more, almost double the yards per target that Hill did against man coverage. 5.8 yards per target for Tyreek, 10.8 for Waddle. Matt Harmon's reception perception charting showed something similar, that Tyreek Hill took a step back against man and press coverage. I don't know what to expect from that dude, but I do know that Jalen Waddle can beat these coverage types. He just hasn't been targeted at a high rate at all. It was like a 30+% target rate for Tyreek against man coverage and an 18% rate for Waddle. But I think we might be seeing things shift more towards Waddle. That's what our guy Dave Richard here at CBS told us when he was going to, feet on the ground at camp watching Miami this summer, that it seemed like Jalen Waddle was establishing himself more and more. And I think it does make sense as he enters his prime and Tyreek leaves his, that we might see things shift over his way more, especially since he's been a good man coverage beater lately and Tyreek has not. With all that said, I do have Tyreek ranked higher because the 200-yard game is looming. It could come at any time where Tyreek just like goes nuts, and it's like, oh yeah, like, I don't know. I think either one of them are worth starting. Do you have any thoughts on the Dolphins guys?
Yeah, the biggest thing to me with this Patriots defense is, so historically the Patriots have been very much like a man-heavy, single-high heavy defense. I didn't really expect that in week one. That isn't really what we had seen from Mike Vrabel historically, and especially after Christian Gonzalez was out, I was very surprised that was the approach they took. Yeah. They got burned by it. Like Geno Smith had the second most yards per attempt of any quarterback in week one. They gave up the most passing yards on throws 20 or more yards downfield of any team in week one. I don't know if they roll out the exact same game plan, but yeah, if they do, I'm kind of with you in that I want to be greedy when others are fearful of this Dolphins offense, just because, this is like very sneaky shootout type of game for me, just with two really, really poor secondaries. So yeah, I think it makes a ton of sense where you have both of them.
I mean, I gave you guys that Jakobi Meyers avoided tackle stat. That was against this defense. Carlton Davis and Alex Austin played all those snaps. Those guys ran a 4.55 and a 4.52 back when they ran. I don't know where they're at now, but probably not keeping up with Jalen Waddle. Christian Gonzalez still not practicing with a hamstring injury that's been bothering him for like a month per Mike Vrabel. So if Waddle is able to go, I think he definitely warrants a start here, even if it doesn't feel good. Let's hear your Travis Hunter thoughts. He's getting dragged online. People are calling him Wan'Dale Robinson. How are we feeling, Ryan?
Yeah, I know. And I'm sorry, this has like nothing really to do with the matchup, but yeah, it's hilarious to me that I wrote like an entire think piece this offseason about Travis Hunter could just be in the Chris Godwin role. He could just play every snap in 11 personnel, and that could be how they want to run their offense. And the Chris Godwin role under Liam Cohen has been incredible, including making Wan'Dale Robinson a thing, making him get drafted. So yeah, I was very happy with the Travis Hunter usage in week one. Seems like others are not, but yeah, I thought it was pretty bullish actually. And I like where I honestly, I might push him up even further. Like I think I would rather start Travis Hunter over a Calvin Ridley, over a Tyreek Hill, even like that. I could push him up a couple spots just based off of that. And obviously this awesome game environment, the Bengals can't stop anybody. Yeah, all that stuff is great too.
Yeah, I think that's totally fair. The Bengals used a really abnormal amount of cover 6 last week. This is a new defensive coordinator here. Cover 6 leads to more slot targets. And so we could see a lot of those for Travis Hunter. They also used a lot of man coverage. So really weird combination here defensively. And, we know that Travis Hunter can shake man coverage and score on any given target. The same can be said for BTJ. So I'm fine firing them up again in a game that could turn into a shootout. I think the reason I'm ranked lower is I just am not feeling it with Trevor Lawrence. But I mean, sure, you could say the same thing about, I guess, Cam Ward. I honestly thought Ward played better. Calvin really did not play well at all in week 1. And the Rams did limit Nico Collins and his production. So maybe we see something similar here. How did they limit Nico Collins? Not really anything they did against Nico Collins. They just got pressure constantly on CJ Stroud, and they didn't have to blitz. They've got the guys to beat a bad offensive line. I think Tennessee's offensive line is going to be better than Houston's, but in week 1 against the Broncos, the Titans gave up the highest pressure rate of any team, gave up a lot of quick pressures. Cam Ward had the 3rd most quick pressures of any quarterback. So could see the exact same thing happen here for Ridley that happened for Nico Collins last week. But at the same time, the Rams used a lot of cover 1, which surprised me. So that's man coverage. That's something that Calvin Ridley can beat. And in general, a lot of single high safety looks. So I think we could also see some big shot plays to Ridley. He was closer to a much bigger game. He just has to catch the freaking ball. I think he can do it. I've seen him make a lot of catches over the years. So yeah. I'm fine starting him here.
Yeah, I agree. Wide range of outcomes on Ridley. We actually had the Rams with an even higher pressure rate than the Broncos. So that I had the exact same note of like, yeah, this offense could unfortunately just kind of be the same thing. But we've also seen the Rams be a very big perimeter funnel going back to the start of last season, kind of no matter who they throw in at their outside cornerback positions. So yeah, Ridley is at least like interesting. I think next to Tyreek Hill makes a ton of sense for a ranking. And not that I'm saying you should start him, but Alec Ayamaner also kind of becomes interesting in that context where everything just gets funneled outside.
Hey, yep, I've got him up at wide receiver 55. For any of you sick pups that are wondering if you should start Alec Ayamaner over Stephon Diggs, go for it. All right, Chris Olave has been disrespected for too long. I'm curious if you have any thoughts on him or Rashid Shaheed. I have them both ranked well ahead of consensus. When I dug into the matchup, I think it actually maybe sets up better for Shaheed. The 49ers use a lot of cover 3. It was Robert Saleh back calling the plays, and Shaheed actually does have a higher target per route run rate against cover 3 last year to now than Chris Olave. But Olave has produced yards more efficiently. They're both really good players. So I'm interested in both of them here. Maybe not quite so much Juwan Johnson as we saw last week.
Yeah, I'm personally not leaning into the schematic really at all for the 49ers, just because they played a lot of cover 3 last week, but Saleh was pretty like variant with his coverages when he was with the Jets. So just like 1 week into the season, I try not to stake takes like on the schematics for guys that we don't have like very solid histories with. But I think like the bigger note for both of these guys is, yeah, I think this is the most underrated game environment of the week is the 49ers and Saints, which is kind of crazy to say about like a Mac Jones versus Spencer Rattler game. But these two teams, man, Kellen Moore is just pumping up the pace like he always has. But yeah, 7th most plays in week 1 out of the Saints. 49ers were up at the 2nd most, which is kind of weird for Kyle Shanahan. But if that's how he's going to play and come out, then yeah, everything I said about targets being consolidated to these wide receivers, it's all very positive for both Olave and Shaheed. So I'll give Olave the slight preference, but I think both of them are actually really solid flex starts this week.
Okay, my next note, I want to talk about the Browns. So Cedric Tillman was used a lot differently than we have seen. It's kind of like the Odunze usage where you are expecting him maybe to just be asked to go in on the outside, but then they actually moved him around a lot, used him in pre-snap motion more than they ever have before. So they've got a matchup here against the Ravens that could turn into a high-scoring game if Flacco was able to move the ball and they're chasing points. We could see a lot of it here. So the Ravens used man coverage a lot in week 1, 40%, 5th highest rate of man coverage. Both Tillman and Judy are good against man. That's been Judy's thing for a long time. Tillman actually had a higher yard per route run rate than Judy versus man coverage last year. Both of them look really good in reception perception versus man. And Harold Fannin was a man winner in week 1 at least. So I think it sets up well for all of them if they can move the chains and maybe again not a big Njoku week. Is that kind of how you're reading this?
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. Is just all of them are guys I strangely want in my lineup after 1 week. Yeah, I mean it's everything we've always seen with how Kevin Stefanski wants to play with Joe Flacco is just high PRO, high pace, a lot of plays. It's great for all the pass catchers. I think even in Njoku, like I'm not ready to completely and totally bail on. The usage at least was still pretty good, but yeah, with you on this matchup specifically, probably being more slanted toward Fannin, towards Ced Tillman.
Okay, let's talk about the Miami Dolphins because no secondary was easier to pick on in week 1. Ryan, how do you read this matchup?
I just kind of similarly to, I feel like I say this a lot, but yeah, it's week 2. Yeah, I just want players against the secondary based on what we saw. So they mostly funneled all of the opposing targets to the outside and to players that were in line. So they were, I believe it was 6th highest outside target share, 7th highest inline target share. Now, obviously, you can say, well, that is just how the Colts chose to play in week 1. They played an insane amount of 12 personnel, like more than we've ever seen from them before. And that results in just Tyler Warren and Michael Pittman being featured a lot more. But I think we could see something kind of similar with the Patriots this week. I don't know that they go super heavy 12 personnel, but this is a team that can do that. And yeah, it would be great for Hunter Henry, great for Kayshon Boutte over on the outside. Boutte, I am maybe like irresponsibly high on. I just keep going back to how he was once a round 1 caliber prospect consensus, like was leading an LSU team in receiving yards over Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas Jr. as freshmen. I don't know. I don't think that I buy that Boutte leads the Patriots in receiving yards this year, essentially. So he is really the only guy, the only receiver I want to start here. I think the matchup's great. But yeah, we'll see how that goes over the season.
Many are saying it is indeed big booty season. I might be too low here, Ryan. Would you move him ahead of Khalil Shakir, Shaheed, Jerry Jeudy, Keon Coleman? These are the players I have directly above Boutte.
I would definitely go ahead of Shakir, who this is kind of like a negative schematic matchup for. We saw the Jets and Aaron Glenn do basically the same thing Aaron Glenn has always done, which is a ton of man coverage, a ton of blitzing. All of that is like arrow up for Keon Coleman and for Josh Palmer, arrow down for Khalil Shakir. So I definitely move Boutte over Shakir. I think he's fine with like next to Shaheed, though. I feel pretty similarly about the two of them.
I have Terry McLaurin at wide receiver 38, behind Keenan Allen, behind Jamison Williams, Jalen Waddle. I assume that's kind of where you're at, like the way that Green Bay plays defense. And then also we've got the ease-in thing maybe going on where Terry McLaurin's first read target rate was very low in his first game back. And Ryan has done research and found that is kind of a trend for players who miss time with a holdout. But still, wide receiver 38 seems crazy low. But I think I'd rather start all these players over him. Do you have any thoughts on that?
No, I'm kind of with you here too. Yeah, as I was saying, the Packers are very much like an underneath funnel type of defense. And yeah, it's in over like every holdout wide receiver's first 6 weeks, even if they're gaining separation per our average separation score metrics, all of their targets per route run are just way down. I'm a believer in like quarterback wide receiver chemistry mattering a lot. We saw Daniels miss McLaurin on a deep shot in week 1. I think maybe he hits that if they had been practicing together all summer. So yeah, I'm kind of with you. I might even push him a little lower. Like I think I would play Jerry Jeudy or Rashid Shaheed. I feel pretty similarly about McLaurin and Kayshon Boutte, honestly.
Awesome. All right. One more note for you guys, and then we're going to move on from we'll talk about flexes real quick, and then we'll get into DFS. The last one I had is the Chargers against the Raiders. We could have a shootout here, and the coverage types, I think, set up better for the secondary pieces. Ladd can get his at any time, but Quentin Johnson actually had a higher target per route run rate than Ladd McConkey last year. If you look at plays that came against cover 3 or cover 4. Lad averaged 3.3 yards per route run against cover 3. So like, I'm not worried about it. But those are the two coverage types that the Raiders did specialize in week 1. Those are really the most predominant coverage types. It's a pretty vanilla scheme from what I can tell. I think that Herbert's just going to kind of find what's there. And I worry that it might be sort of similar to last week, where that means more plays for somebody like QJ. I would prefer to I think the best matchups to set up for Lad and maybe not so much QJ are man heavy matchups. Do you agree with that? Yeah. And so
fully agree.
So QJ can he can find a spot. Like Herbert can hit him where he needs to be within the route concepts as he runs through zones. But is he going to go beat man coverage? Maybe not so much. But Lad does that. Even Keenan Allen can do that still. So in this spot, I'm fine with QJ. I have him just behind Booty. I have him ahead of Michael Pittman, who has a tough matchup. Demario Douglas is there as well. Good matchup for him. And then you get into some of these lower range guys. I've got Keenan Allen ahead of all those guys. All right, let's talk about, I'm going to throw my tight end rankings up on the screen just so people can see them. And we're going to talk about some flex decisions. So I've got a really weird range. I don't know if you've ever done flex rankings, but when you look at some of the players comparatively, it's are you starting Devontae Adams? Are you starting Breece Hall? That kind of thing is just weird to me. So I've got Pickens pushed really, really high. And I think that might be somebody who people are thinking about for flex spots, but it's still below this is for half PPR, below Travis Etienne and Breece Hall, who played really well in week 1, and ahead of Tony Pollard. So I think these might be, people's RB3, wide receiver 3 kind of situation here. Does that all sound right to you with Pickens? I know you're real excited for him.
Yeah, I'm incredibly excited for him. I would actually push Pickens ahead of Etienne and Hall in the flex this week, which is, it's extremely bold. But we can get into the reason, I guess, and this even segues into what I wanted to talk about for DFS anyway. So knock out 2 birds with 1 stone here. The Giants play a ton of single high coverage. They were at 64% last year, 3rd most in the NFL, played basically the same exact amount last week, did not adjust at all against a very dangerous Jaden Daniels, Terry McLaurin deep shot combo, at least in theory. We just talked about the holdout stuff and the chemistry issues there. But yeah, this team is just always going to play a bunch of single high. They did it against the Cowboys in both of their games against them last year. And George Pickens last year, double the target per route run rate against single high compared to 2 high. It just creates so many more of these one-on-one situations on the outside where Pickens, that's kind of his bread and butter. He's like the anti-Quentin Johnston in that he will beat his man when he's manned up one-on-one, but he just doesn't have the nuance to find all of these holes in the zone. But that makes this perfect for Pickens.
Yep, makes a lot of sense. You're even higher on him than me, which is surprising. I don't find very many who are higher than George Pickens than me and Dan are. So here's my flex rankings. You can see on the screen here. I've got Pickens just below these running backs for half PPR. I do have him ahead of T. Higgins, ahead of Marvin Harrison Jr., ahead of Devontae Smith and Ricky Pearsall. So we've got Pollard in this range against the Rams. I was really impressed with what Pollard did last week to be able to put any numbers on the board in that spot. Really, when I watched the Titans, it was just him and Cam Ward that was making anything happen at all. A little bit of the rookie out wide, but even that wasn't materializing really. I think as we get into some more neutral game scripts, Pollard is going to be a pretty relevant fantasy player. But I do have Zay Flowers and Pearsall ahead of him, and Devontae Smith as well for half PPR. Do you have does anything really stand out to you with the running backs and receivers in the flex decisions here?
I think I'm maybe more just fearful of some of these running backs than you are. I think I'm more fearful of Travis Etienne. I think I would flex most of these wide receivers ahead of him. Even Zay Flowers has an awesome schematic matchup. I would slightly lean Etienne over Flowers and Pearsall, but yeah, I would knock him down a bit. Hall, we talked about, I would knock down a bit just because of game script here being a little bit scary. In terms of anything else that sticks out, DK Metcalf, I'm a little bit scared of it. Like in this revenge game, we saw the Seahawks play a lot more cover 4, a lot more too high stuff in general last week. They've always been like very adaptable with when they've been under Mike McDonald, but they played a ton of too high against Aaron Rodgers and the Jets last year. So I do wonder if that's more of like an Aaron Rodgers thing where they want to limit his stuff. I think they would be happy to let Rodgers like dink and dunk for a 4.6 ADOT again, like he did last week. So that's like very hard, like reading into game planning. But yeah, I think for those reasons, I kind of like these Bucks guys, McMillan, Odunze over a Metcalf.
Yeah. Makes sense. Man, I can't wait to get this show really rolling when we have more and more data. We don't have to just kind of guess if it was just 1 week that they've been waiting all summer to plan for. Yeah, that makes sense. Somebody asked why we have Debo, why I have Debo ahead of Travion. I think that you're with me based on what I've heard. I think the matchup sets up really well for him. I feel pretty good about starting Debo tonight in a potential shootout in a game where Washington could be playing from behind. I think he honestly might have as many, if not more, manufactured touches than Travion, which is insane to say about a receiver compared to a running back. But Debo's not your typical receiver. So yeah, I feel pretty good about him there, even with Travion facing Miami. I push Travion as high as I can. This is where I landed on him. I'll probably push him ahead of Swift. But I don't think I can push him ahead of Odunze, Egbuka, Mike Evans, Tedro, McMillan, any of these receivers. Moving on into some lower end range flex plays. We got Alvin Kamara, David Montgomery, J.K. Dobbins ahead of Hollywood Brown, ahead of Jakobi Meyers. This is for half PPR. Totally fine moving them ahead of them for PPR. But even for half PPR, would you rather start these receivers?
Oh, okay. This is half PPR. I think I might have missed that. So maybe disregard some of my like running back versus wide receiver analysis from 2 minutes ago. But yeah, no, for half PPR, I'm fine with Brown being behind those 3 guys.
Yeah. Jordan Mason and Aaron Jones right after Hollywood Brown and Jakobi Meyers. And then we've got a bunch of receivers, DJ Moore, Tyreek Hill, Calvin Ridley, Travis Hunter, Chris Olave, Jalen Waddle, a group that I just don't know what the hell to do with. So I guess I feel a little bit more confident in the Minnesota running backs. They're going to at least get 8 to 10 touches, I think. Could be more, could be a shootout against Atlanta. Maybe these receivers outscore them. But I think if you simulate it 1,000 times, the running backs outscore them most of the time. Sam Laporta, Tyler Warren in this range. I really like both of them. Think they have matchups where they could eat. Then we get to some more running backs. We get to the Seattle guys, Jalen Warren as well. Jameson Williams, Cedric Tillman, Tyrone Tracy, and Keenan Allen. Anything stand out here? You ready to move on to DFS?
Yeah, we can just move on, honestly. But I mean, we kind of covered everything I wanted to talk about in terms of DFS, or at least most of it. I can talk about it from like a game theory angle, like a little bit, if you think anyone's interested in that. But yeah, like matchups wise, I feel like we were pretty exhaustive here.
Let me double check the notes. I've got a few. Can I hear your Josh Allen quarterback rushing splits versus Aaron Glenn defenses?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So thank you for remembering that, because that's like a very big one that I did not want to go unnoticed here. So basically, as we mentioned earlier, Aaron Glenn did basically the same thing on defense that we've seen him do for years in Detroit. And this is a multi-year trend going back since 2022, has 12 games, including the playoffs, against a combination of hypermobile quarterbacks. I included Justin Fields, Lamar Jackson, Anthony Richardson, Kyler Murray, Daniel Jones, Jalen Hurts, Jaden Daniels, and Josh Allen in this. That group against Aaron Glenn defenses has averaged over 76 rushing yards per game, compared to 44 rushing yards per game being that group's average over this period in all other games, and 27.9 fantasy points per game against Aaron Glenn defenses for these hypermobile players. Allen himself is at 73 rushing yards per game and 37 fantasy points per game in 2 games against Aaron Glenn over this period. It's just kind of a sacrifice that Glenn's defenses tend to make, which is when you're throwing all these blitzes, all this man coverage, if you have a guy that can escape the pocket and scramble, he can really, really make you pay. And that is all kind of what leads me to this is just a Josh Allen blow up spot in DFS where I want to be, at least in some of my lineups, like paying up to him. It gets a little bit tricky with who you stack him with, just because while man coverage is great for Keon Coleman, theoretically, Sauce Gardner is like a shadow corner now. So that gives like some other things to think about. Josh Palmer is also a good man coverage beater that might be one to consider in like these very large field GPPs where you have to beat hundreds of thousands of other people. I don't think many people are going to play Josh Palmer with Josh Allen. That's something kind of contrarian that I like.
I think you're right. I don't think very many people are going to play him. Trey McBride destroys cover 3 defenses per the great work of Ryan Heath. He's got the Panthers this week, who can be beaten in just about any way. And it seems like the way that the Cardinals like to attack through the passing game is through McBride. How are you feeling about Trey in this spot?
Yeah, I love McBride here as well. It's very much like a pay up week at tight end and at quarterback for that reason. So yeah, his splits against cover 3 are amazing. The Panthers play a ton of it, as you said. Even more to it is that these teams played each other in week 16 last year, and Trey McBride notably had his lowest target share of the season. He was under a 10% target share that week, but it kind of came in the context of this time when the Cardinals were getting all of this criticism for like, hey, why isn't Marvin Harrison Jr. like a superstar? That was like the constant like media chorus at this point around the Cardinals. It was like, why isn't Marv incredible? You could even track in their press conferences, they all started talking Marv up even more in the month of December, like than they had ever done at any other point in the season. So I think they were really just trying to force targets to Marv in that matchup back in week 16. He led the team with 8, but I mean, they kind of paid for it. That was like that really ugly overtime loss to the Panthers where kind of neither passing game could get going. I don't think they make the same mistake this week, essentially. I think they just feed McBride, take advantage of this awesome schematic matchup he has. And he's one of my favorite tight end plays of the week. Will be pretty popular, so you have to do some weird stuff around him, but I do think he is worth including in a lot of your lineups, even as kind of the chalkier tight end.
All right. Love a big McBride week. Hope you are right on that. I've got a few notes, matchup-based stuff here. I really love digging into the run game stuff, the schematic, like how different coordinators design their run games. And since Dan's not here, I'll go ahead and disparage Zach Taylor for him. The Bengals just run it straight up the middle. They just kind of run it up the middle over and over and just keep trying to run up the middle. Man gap, just let Chase Brown do his thing. And I think it might work this week. The Jaguars allowed an 86% success rate on man gap runs in week 1 compared to 46% on zone. I think the way to beat this defense under new defensive coordinator Campanelli is just kind of straight at them. There are another defenses kind of like sitting back and seeing what you're going to do. And I think that's what Zach Taylor wanted to do last week. Gave over 60% of the touches to Chase Brown. Maybe that had something to do with Jim Schwartz and the Browns always giving the passing game trouble. I don't think you need 60% of the touches for Chase Brown to still crush in this spot. I think you'll get running back targets too. Running back targets and checkdowns probably in this matchup. So wanted to point that out. He's too cheap, in my opinion, on DraftKings, and maybe people, I don't know, do you have any idea on projected ownership, like rostered rates? It wouldn't surprise me if people kind of take a step back because he didn't have a good week 1.
I do think Brown is going to be one of the most popular running backs of the slate. I think Christian McCaffrey, Devon Etienne probably clear him in ownership, but yeah, he's probably going to be 3rd or 4th, and rightfully so for a lot of the reasons you just outlined. Yeah, I thought his usage was great in week 1.
Yeah. Dolphins, I already hit on. I really don't think people are going to want to play them, but I really love the spot here for all the reasons we talked about earlier. And then a couple other running backs. If I didn't hear them mentioned, I don't think, among your top 4 or 5 projected rostered rates, Kyren Williams or Breece Hall. Do you think Breece will be popular maybe?
Breece will not be popular at all, but I do really like him as the bring back on the Josh Allen stuff. Mm-hmm. So a lot of Breece's career splits are really weird, where you wouldn't think that he would have like these big win-loss splits because he's used so much in the passing game, but he does. He's like the RB3 by fantasy points per game in wins, half that in losses. But it's not because really of game script stuff. It's because there are just all those games where he was carrying like these awful Jets teams through explosive plays to like ugly wins with Zach Wilson or what have you. And I mean, we saw the explosive plays there in week 1. I don't know that the Jets win this game, but I do think if they stay in it, that Breece Hall is probably a big part of it. So yeah, I like him specifically for DFS stacking, even if I'm like a little bit lower in terms of like flex half PPR rankings, as we talked about.
Yeah, I like the matchup for him. Keep in mind, this was against Derrick Henry, but the Bills allowed 9 yards per carry on outside zone runs last week. I think that this defense can be beaten by a running back like Breece Hall. And maybe we even see some of the Braylon Allen stuff get going here. They didn't look very physical last week. 108 yards allowed on outside zone runs alone. And so that's what Breece, almost like, I think it was like above 90% of his runs were zone runs, and like 75% of them were outside zone or something. So could be a good spot for him schematically. Kyren, the Titans allowed 132 yards up the middle. One of those was a huge run to RJ Harvey, but still they missed 5 tackles on runs up the middle. So it wasn't just that one big run. And that is, of course, what Kyren Williams does. He's probably not springing any 60-yard runs, but I do think he's just going to grind it out over and over against the Titans. And if they're playing with a lead, Kyren could have 2 or 3 touchdowns, and like, I doubt is anybody going to want to play him. It doesn't make any sense to me that they would on a slate with a lot of running back plays that we like.
Yeah, I think he'll probably be like the 4th or 5th most popular of the slate. But yeah, I think he's good though, even at that ownership, just because of his splits and wins. He makes for like a really natural stack with the Rams defense as well, with all of the pressure rate stuff that we just talked about. A lot of sack potential there. So yeah, I think he's really strong, even if he's going to come in at like 15 to 18%, I think was like the early ownership projections I had seen on Kyren. But also, guys, like DFS ownership stuff is very, very loose until like Saturday afternoon, I would say. Like it's, we're really kind of guessing before every site like does like their first real run of projections. Because yeah, the early week stuff can change very rapidly.
Yeah. Alrighty, great show, Ryan. This is fun to find our footing here and kind of come together at the end of the week with our crazy brains with too much coffee and everything, and just see what comes out. We really have no idea, but pretty fun so far through 2 shows. Josh, if I can share my screen here, I want to point people to the episode that I put together yesterday. If you've missed either of these past 2 shows, they're really good. They're obviously long, but I think that they're relevant for you no matter what. This waiver wire picks and week 1 context. Waiver wire is about 30 minutes at the very end of the show. So everything before that will be really good stuff for you. Dan and I put that together. This is our signature show that we do each week. It's week 1 gyms. We talk about Jakobi Croskey-Merritt, talk about Harold Fannin, all the good stuff for you, you sickos here. And then this one, almost 3 hours long, full featured movie featuring only me, talking about every single team and basically every single player. That's really good stuff as well. This has been Mastering Matchups. This is my guy, Ryan. He does fantastic work. You have to follow him and check out everything that he's up to if you are not already on game there. Ryan, do you have anything you want to leave the people with?
Yeah, not really. As I said, check out Advanced Matchups over on fantasypoints.com Friday mornings. It comes out. Yeah, everybody hit the like button, give Jacob all the love. This man has been incredible. He is a content colossus this week, doing amazing work. So yeah, good luck in week 2, everybody. It's been a lot of fun.
See you guys. Thanks. Beyond the Box Score. Peace.